I'll never forget the moment my husband lifted his glass at his family dinner and turned me into the villain in front of everyone. We were sitting at his mother's long dining table, candles lit, plates steaming, relatives laughing like it was just another perfect Sunday night. Then Jason smiled, cleared his throat, and said, "I just want to thank my family for supporting us, especially Emily." My stomach tightened. He looked at me, not with love, but with that calm, rehearsed expression I'd started to fear. And then he said it. "Even though her body can't give me children, I'm staying. Because that's what a real husband does." The room went silent. His mother's hand flew to her chest like I'd just confessed a crime. People stared at me with pity and disgust. But what they didn't know, what he prayed I'd never tell them, was this. My body wasn't broken. His was. And I had his medical records in my purse. For 2 years, I tried to convince myself that hope was louder than fear. Every month started the same way, me counting days, tracking symptoms, pretending not to stare at pregnancy tests like they held my future inside them. And every month ended the same way, too. A single red line. A silent bathroom. And Jason, standing behind me with his arms around my shoulders, whispering, "Next time. It'll happen next time." He always said it like he believed it. Maybe that was the cruelest part. He was so good at sounding sincere. When we finally booked the appointment with a fertility specialist, I walked into that clinic with trembling hands, but my head held high. I told myself that whatever was wrong, we'd face it like a team. Like adults. Like partners. Jason sat beside me in the waiting room, his knee bouncing with nervous energy. He kept rubbing his palms against his jeans. "You okay?" I asked softly. He forced a smile. "Yeah, just hate doctors." I nodded, even though my stomach was already twisting into knots. Dr. Hayes was calm in the way doctors always are, the kind of calm that feels almost inhuman when your life is falling apart. She flipped through our charts, then folded her hands neatly on her desk. "Okay," she said. "I have your results." I reached for Jason's hand. He squeezed mine so tightly, it almost hurt. Dr. Hayes continued, "Emily, you have mild endometriosis. It can make conception more difficult, but it's treatable. With medication and time, your chances are still good." I sucked in a shaky breath. Relief and dread collided inside my chest. Then she turned the page. "And Jason, your sperm count is significantly below normal. Motility is low as well. This is classified as severe male factor infertility." The words hit the room like a slap. Jason's hand went cold in mine. Dr. Hayes kept talking, explaining treatment plans, supplements, medication schedules, how this wasn't hopeless, how many couples in our situation still had children. But I barely heard any of it because I was watching my husband's face. He smiled. He nodded. He even laughed once, like it was all fine. He looked at Dr. Hayes and said, "So we'll take the meds. Both of us. Whatever it takes." Then he looked at me with those warm eyes I'd fallen in love with and whispered, "We're in this together." I almost cried right there. I wanted to believe him so badly. When the appointment ended, Jason wrapped his arm around my shoulders in the hallway and kissed my temple. "See? We've got a plan," he said. "We're going to be okay." The moment we stepped into the parking lot, though, everything changed. Jason stopped walking. He let go of me like I was suddenly too heavy to hold. Then he leaned close, voice sharp and urgent. "We're not telling anyone about my results," he said. I blinked. "What?" "My mom," he added quickly. "Especially my mom." I stared at him like I didn't recognize the man standing in front of me. "Jason, why?" His jaw clenched. "Because she wouldn't handle it. She can't. She thinks I'm perfect." I swallowed. "It's not about perfect. It's medical." "No," his tone snapped like a whip. "Emily, listen to me. If my mom finds out I'm the reason we can't have kids, right away she'll never look at me the same." My throat tightened. "So, what do we tell them?" Jason's eyes flicked toward the clinic doors, then back at me. His voice lowered into something cold. "We say it's you." I felt my blood drain from my face. And then he softened, too quickly, too rehearsed, like he'd practiced this part in his head. "I'm not saying you're broken," he murmured, touching my arm. "Just we keep it vague. We protect my privacy. We protect our marriage." I should have walked away right then. But I didn't. Because I still believed that love meant sacrificing. So I nodded. And I let my husband bury the truth. Not knowing he was about to dig my grave with it. I told myself the secrecy was temporary. A small sacrifice. A private burden Jason and I would carry together until the treatments worked, until the timing felt right, until we had good news to share. That's what I believed. What I didn't know, what still makes my skin crawl when I think about it, was that Jason didn't even wait an hour before he betrayed me. That same night, while I was in the shower trying to scrub off the smell of disinfectant from the clinic, I heard his voice downstairs. He was in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, speaking softly. At first, I assumed he was calling Mark his brother or maybe his dad. But then I heard the name that made my stomach drop. Mom. I froze, water still running over my shoulders. Jason's tone shifted into something gentle. Almost wounded. Like he was holding back tears. Like he was the one suffering. I stepped out of the shower quietly, wrapped a towel around myself, and stood halfway down the stairs, listening. I don't know what we're going to do, he said. The doctor said it's her. Her. Not us. Not both of us. Her. I gripped the banister, so hard my knuckles turned white. His mother, Linda, must have said something dramatic on the other end because Jason sighed deeply. I know, he murmured. It's heartbreaking. But I promised I wouldn't leave her. That's not who I am. My throat tightened. I couldn't breathe. He continued. I'm just asking you, please don't bring it up at dinner. She's sensitive about it. Sensitive. That word hit harder than any insult. Not because I was sensitive, because he was about to paint me as weak, fragile, defective while he stood behind me as the loyal husband. I stepped back quietly before he could see me, my legs trembling. I walked upstairs like a ghost and sat on the edge of our bed, still damp, staring at nothing. When Jason came into the bedroom later, he acted like everything was normal. He kissed my forehead. Hey, he said softly. You okay? I searched his face for guilt, for shame, for anything human. But he looked calm, comfortable, even pleased. Who are you talking to? I asked carefully. Jason didn't blink. My mom, he said. She asked how the appointment went. I swallowed. And what did you tell her? He wrapped his arms around me, pulling me closer like he was comforting me. I kept it vague, he said. Just told her we might need time. It was such a smooth lie that for one stupid second, I almost believed him. Then Sunday came. His family dinner. Linda's house always looked like something out of a magazine. Perfect white tablecloth, candles lit, matching plates, laughter echoing in every corner. The kind of place where messes weren't allowed. Neither were uncomfortable truths. The moment I walked in, Linda looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Her smile was tight, her eyes sharp. Oh, Emily, she said, stepping forward and taking my hands. Her voice dripped with fake warmth. How are you feeling, sweetheart? I'm fine, I said, forcing a smile. She squeezed my hands harder, like she didn't believe me. It must be so hard, she whispered loudly, loud enough for the whole room to hear. Knowing you know. My stomach turned. Jason's aunt, Carol, leaned in. Knowing what? Linda sighed dramatically. Jason's hand slid around my waist, gentle but firm, like a warning. And Linda said it. Well, she began, looking around the room as if she were sharing tragic news about a dying pet. Jason and Emily have been struggling. Because Emily has some issues. My face burned. I opened my mouth but no sound came out. Jason nodded solemnly, like a grieving saint. It's okay, he said, rubbing my back. We're staying positive. Linda dabbed at imaginary tears. My poor boy, she said, voice trembling. He's always been so loyal. Then she turned to me, smiled sweetly, and said, but don't worry, honey. We're all praying for you. For your condition. Condition. The word wrapped around my neck like a rope. All around the table, people started murmuring sympathy. Not for us. Not for a marriage. For Jason. For the man stuck with the woman who couldn't give him children. And Jason just sat there letting it happen. No, worse. He leaned forward and added, casually, like it was just a detail he couldn't forget. The doctor said it might take a long time, he said. And the treatments, they're pretty intense. Linda gasped. Oh my God. What kind of treatments? Jason glanced at me. Then he smiled, gentle and tragic. Hormones, he said softly. Lots of them. Poor Emily's body has been through so much. I wanted to scream. Because it was true, I was on medication. But he wasn't telling them the part where he was supposed to be taking his too. He wasn't telling them the part where the doctor said his infertility was the main issue. No. Jason was building a story. And in his story, I wasn't his wife. I was his burden. And his family believed every word. After that first dinner, something inside the family shifted. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was worse, quiet. The way Linda looked at me now wasn't the way you look at someone you hope will get better. It was the way you look at a faulty product you're waiting to return. And Jason? Jason became her favorite story to tell. Every week, he was the loyal husband, the hero, the saint. Jason is such a good man, Linda would say to relatives at church, in grocery stores, even in the hallway outside the bathroom at family gatherings. Not every man would stay with a woman who can't give him children. It was like she enjoyed saying it. Like my pain was entertainment, something she could decorate with pity to make herself look compassionate. At first, I tried to swallow it. I tried to be polite. I tried to keep my face calm, my smile small, my posture perfect, like if I behaved well enough, they'd stop treating me like a defect. But there's only so many times you can hear the same cruel sentence before it starts carving grooves into your identity. One Sunday afternoon, Linda pressed a stack of printed papers into my hands as we sat at the table. "These are helpful," she said brightly. I glanced down. Adoption agencies, surrogacy packages, fertility clinics, divorce lawyers. I looked back up, stunned. "Linda," I said carefully, "why are you giving me this?" Her smile didn't flicker. "Oh, honey, just options." Jason didn't even look up from his plate. I turned to him. "Jason." He shrugged like it was nothing. "My mom's just trying to help," he said. "You know how she is." No. I didn't know how she was. Because the Linda I knew before the lie, wasn't kind, but she wasn't openly cruel. Now she treated me like I was already gone. Like I was a placeholder. And the next Sunday proved it. I walked into her dining room and immediately noticed a woman I didn't recognize sitting at the table. Young. Polished. Hair curled. Laugh a little too loud. Linda practically glowed when she saw me. "Emily," she chirped. "Come in. I want you to meet someone." She guided me toward the woman like she was presenting a prize. "This is Natalie," she said, placing her hand proudly on the girl's shoulder. "She goes to my church. Isn't she just lovely?" Natalie smiled at me like she was smiling at a cashier. "Hi," she said sweetly. "So nice to meet you." Then Linda added, casually, like she was discussing the weather. "Natalie wants a big family someday." Her eyes flicked toward Jason as she said it. My skin prickled. Jason, my husband, actually looked up and smiled back. "Oh, wow," he said, laughing a little. "That's great." Linda chuckled like she'd made the funniest joke in the world. "You know," she continued, "Natalie comes from strong stock. Her mother had 5 kids. Natural births. No complications." I felt my face go hot. I stared at my plate, nails digging into my palm under the table. Natalie leaned closer to Jason, twirling a piece of hair around her finger. "So, Jason," she said, voice playful, "your mom tells me you work in finance?" Jason nodded. "Yeah. Corporate planning." "Oh, I love that," she said. "We should connect sometime. Networking is so important." I waited for Jason to shut it down. To say, "I'm married." To say, "My wife is sitting right here." To say anything that made it clear he wasn't available for his mother's little matchmaking game. Instead, he pulled out his phone. "Sure," he said. "Here, I'll give you my number." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Linda watched, pleased, like she was watching a deal close. I looked at Jason in disbelief. "What are you doing?" Jason didn't even glance at me. "Relax," he murmured. "It's just networking." Networking. I wanted to laugh, but the sound got stuck in my throat. Because I wasn't stupid. I knew what this was. Linda brought Natalie as a message. A warning. A replacement. And Jason was playing along. The next week there was another one. A different girl this time. Linda introduced her as Chelsea. And again, same routine. Chelsea's always wanted children. She's so healthy. She has such good genes. And again, Linda sat her right beside Jason. And again, Jason didn't move. Didn't object. Didn't switch seats. Didn't protect me. He just smiled. He laughed. He listened. I started to feel like I was watching my marriage die in slow motion while everyone around me pretended it was normal. Then came the night I saw the text. It was Tuesday. Jason left his iPad on the couch while he showered. The screen lit up with a notification. A message preview. "Natalie, are you really happy in your marriage?" My stomach dropped so fast I felt dizzy. I stared at it for 3 seconds, frozen. Then another message popped up. "Natalie, because you deserve to be a father someday." My hands shook as I picked up the iPad. I told myself not to look, that it was private, that I should respect his boundaries. But my entire life had become a lie built on privacy, and I was done being the only one forced to swallow it. I opened the thread. There were weeks of messages. Flirty, little jokes. Heart emojis. And the one that made my blood run cold. "Natalie, if you ever decide you're ready to start over, I'd be willing." I barely heard the bathroom door open. I didn't hear Jason's footsteps until he was behind me. "What are you doing?" he snapped. I turned the iPad toward him, hands trembling. "You gave her your number," I said, voice low. "You've been talking to her." Jason's face tightened instantly, like the mask was sliding back into place. "It's nothing," he said. "She's just a friend." I laughed, one sharp, ugly sound. "A friend," I whispered. "Your mother is bringing women to dinner to replace me, Jason." His eyes went cold. "She's worried," he said simply. "And, honestly, she has a right to be." I stared at him. The words didn't make sense. Not at first. Then they hit. My throat burned. A right to be? I repeated. She has a right to humiliate me in front of your entire family? Jason sighed like I was exhausting him. I'm just trying to think about the future, he said. You should be thinking about it too. The future. As if I hadn't been living in hormones and doctor visits and broken hope for 2 years. As if my body was the only one failing. Jason reached for the iPad like he was taking back a weapon. Stop overreacting, he said. You're sensitive. Sensitive. That word again. That weaponized word. And in that moment, something inside me began to harden. Because I finally understood the truth. Jason didn't just let his mother treat me like I was defective. He needed her to. He needed the world to believe the problem was me. So he could stay spotless. So he could stay perfect. So he could keep playing the hero. While I bled in silence. After the text messages, I stopped sleeping. Not because I was afraid Jason would cheat, although that fear crawled under my skin like something dirty. It was because I was afraid I had married a stranger. A man who could sit beside me in a doctor's office, hold my hand, promise me we were a team, and then go home and build an entire fake narrative where I was the broken one. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Linda's voice. Bless your heart. Poor Jason. It's so noble of him. And every time, Jason's silence echoed louder than her words. I started paying attention to things I used to ignore. The way Jason would rehearse his sadness before family dinners, deep sighs in the mirror, a heavy posture like he was carrying tragedy on his back. The way he'd post cryptic Facebook updates after church. Some battles are private, but I'll keep fighting for my family. The way relatives would comment. You're such a strong man, Jason. Emily is lucky to have you.
Lucky.
I wanted to scream.
Because none of them saw what I saw.
The indifference in his eyes when I cried. The impatience when I mentioned side effects. The way his comfort always felt like management, not love. Then my body started reacting to the medication worse than before. My hormones made me nauseous at random times. My stomach cramped so hard I'd have to grip the counter until it passed. My mood swung so violently I didn't recognize myself. One night, I threw up in the sink at 2 a.m. and sat on the cold tile floor afterward, sweating, shaking, trying to catch my breath. Jason walked in half asleep, leaned against the doorway, and looked at me like I was an inconvenience. You okay? He asked flat. I stared at him, lips trembling. I'm sick. He rubbed his face. Yeah, well, this is what you wanted, right? That sentence landed like a slap. I didn't answer. Because I knew if I did, I might say something I couldn't take back. And at that point, I still thought part of him might come back. I still thought maybe this was stress.
Fear. Shame.
I didn't understand yet that it wasn't panic. It was character. 2 days later, I went to take out the trash and noticed Jason's car was unlocked. That never happened. Jason was obsessive about locking things. About control. I paused, the bag of trash hanging from my wrist. Something in my gut told me to look.
I don't know why.
Maybe because when you've been lied to long enough, your instincts become louder than your morals. I opened the driver's door. The smell of stale coffee hit me. I leaned in and saw a plastic bag tucked between the passenger seat and the center console. The corner of a cardboard box was sticking out, like someone had shoved it there in a rush. My heart began to race. I pulled it out. One box. Then another. Then another. They were all the same. Prescription medication. Jason's name printed clearly on each label. His dosage. His refill dates. And every box was unopened. Still sealed. Still full. I stared at them until my eyes blurred. My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped the boxes. When Jason got home that evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the boxes lined up in front of me like evidence in a criminal case. He walked in whistling, actually whistling like he didn't have a care in the world. Then he saw my face. The whistle died in his throat. What's this? He asked, stepping closer. I didn't speak. I just slid the first box toward him. Jason's eyes flicked down to the label. His jaw tightened immediately. Where did you get those? He snapped. In your car, I said quietly. His voice jumped an octave. Why were you in my car? I blinked, stunned by his focus. Not on what he'd done, not on the lie, but on the fact that I discovered it. Jason, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. Why aren't you taking your medication? He didn't answer at first. He just stared at the boxes like they offended him. Then he scoffed. I tried, he muttered. I leaned forward. Tried. Jason rolled his eyes. They made me feel sick. My chest rose and fell sharply. You think I don't feel sick? I whispered. Jason's lips pressed together. His expression hardened. I'm not doing this, he said, turning away like he was done. No, I stood up fast, chair scraping the floor. You're doing this. Right now. Jason turned back, annoyed. Emily, stop. Stop what? I snapped. My voice shook. Stop catching you? Stop forcing you to admit the truth. His eyes flashed dangerously. Then he said it. The sentence that shattered whatever love I still had left for him. It doesn't matter, he said coldly. Because you're still the main problem. I felt my body go numb. What? I breathed. Jason crossed his arms, like he was explaining something obvious to a child. The doctor only said I had issues to make you feel better, he said. That's what doctors do. They try to spread the blame so women don't get depressed. I stared at him in disbelief. So, you're saying the tests were fake? I asked, voice cracking. Jason shrugged. Not fake. Just exaggerated. My throat burned. But the paperwork. Jason cut me off with a bitter laugh. You really think my sperm is the issue? He said. Emily, come on. You've always had problems. Painful periods, hormonal issues, now this. I felt like I was watching him rewrite reality in real time. And you let your mother. My voice broke. You let her tell everyone my body was broken. Jason's face barely moved. That's on you, he said. If you can't handle my family's opinions, maybe you shouldn't come. I sucked in a sharp breath. My hands curled into fists. I wanted to scream. To throw those boxes at his face. To rip the mask off in front of the entire world. Instead, I smiled. Not because I was amused. Because something inside me snapped into place, cold and sharp, like a blade. Okay, I said softly. Jason blinked, confused. Okay. I nodded slowly, gathering the boxes into my arms. Okay, I repeated. Then I walked past him and up the stairs like everything was normal. Jason called after me, irritated. Emily, don't be dramatic. But I didn't respond. Because I wasn't dramatic anymore. I was done being emotional. Done being scared. Done being manipulated. That night, while Jason slept like a man with nothing to hide, I opened our filing cabinet. And I pulled out every single document from the fertility clinic. Every lab report. Every doctor's note. Every test result. My hands shook as I flipped through pages, but not from fear. From rage. Because the truth was there, written in black ink, waiting like a loaded gun. And I realized something Jason never understood. He thought I'd stay quiet to protect him. He thought I'd keep sacrificing myself to keep his image clean. But he was wrong. Because if he wanted to make me the villain, then he was about to see what I looked like when I stopped being the victim. And for the first time in months, I slept. Not peacefully. Not happily. But with a decision burning in my chest. The next family dinner was coming. And this time, I was bringing receipts. The next Sunday felt like walking toward an execution I had planned myself. All day my stomach churned. Not from the hormones this time, but from the certainty of what I was about to do. I kept opening my purse to make sure the folder was still there, like it could disappear if I didn't keep checking. A thick manila folder. Copies of medical records. Lab results. Doctor's notes. Everything Jason had built his lies on top of. Jason drove us to his mother's house like it was any other dinner. He even played music. Soft, lazy songs that didn't match the violent storm in my chest. At one point he reached over and squeezed my knee. You've been quiet, he said, voice smooth. You okay? I looked out the window at the passing streets. Houses. Trees. Normal life. Then I turned to him and smiled. Never better, I said. Jason's eyes narrowed slightly, like he didn't know what version of me he was looking at. Linda's house was glowing when we arrived, warm yellow light spilling out from every window, like it was a place of comfort instead of cruelty. I could already hear laughter inside, the clink of glasses, the sound of people who had no idea a bomb was about to go off in the middle of their table. Jason rang the bell. Linda opened the door in her pearl necklace and perfect sweater, smiling wide like she was about to host a television holiday special. There's my boy, she squealed. She hugged Jason like he was returning from war. Then she turned to me. Her smile tightened. Emily, she said, voice sweet as poison. Hello, honey. Her eyes flicked to my stomach, like she expected to see a baby bump out of sheer willpower. I walked in calmly, the folder heavy in my purse like a heartbeat. The dining room was packed. Aunt Carol, Uncle Frank, cousins, church friends, even people I barely knew, relatives who never came unless there was drama or gossip. Linda had made sure the audience was big. Jason's brother Mark looked up when he saw me, his expression careful, like he sensed tension he didn't understand. His sister Sophie waved timidly. Hi, Emily, she said softly. I nodded to her, grateful for even that small kindness. Linda clapped her hands. Everyone, dinner's ready. We sat. Jason took his usual seat to my right. Linda sat at the head of the table, the queen of her little kingdom. I placed my purse on my lap. My fingers curled around the folder inside. The food smelled incredible. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, gravy, warm rolls. The kind of meal you serve when you want people to feel safe, comfortable, distracted. Linda raised her glass once everyone had a plate. Before we eat, she said, smiling brightly, I want to say something. Jason's posture straightened.
Of course it did.
Because this moment had been made for him. Linda continued. We are blessed. Blessed with family. Blessed with love. And blessed, she paused and looked at me like I was a charity case, with a chance to carry one another through hard times. The table murmured amen. My throat tightened. Linda dabbed her eyes dramatically. You all know, she said, voice trembling in fake emotion, that Jason has been going through something incredibly painful. Jason lowered his head like he was humble. Linda put a hand on his arm. My son has shown strength that most men don't have, she continued. Because not every man would stay. My fork froze. Not every man would stay. That phrase again. Like I was a sentence. Like I was a punishment. Linda turned to the table. But Jason loves Emily. Even though she sighed, her body is struggling. The room went quiet. People shifted in their seats, suddenly attentive. Here it comes. Jason stood up slowly, his chair scraping the floor. He lifted his glass and smiled like the hero in his own movie. I just want to say, he began, voice loud enough for the entire table, I appreciate all of you supporting us. He glanced at me, and for a second I saw it. Not love. Not partnership. Control. He was about to perform. Jason continued. Emily has been dealing with challenges. Hard ones. My stomach twisted. But I made vows, he said, voice thick with fake emotion. And I'm keeping them. Even though her body can't give me children. The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Linda pressed a hand to her chest dramatically. Aunt Carol whispered, Oh my God. I felt eyes on me from every angle. Pity. Judgment. Disgust. Some people looked like they were watching a tragedy. Others looked like they were watching a failure. And Jason stood there basking in it. Basking in the sympathy, the admiration, the praise he had bought with my humiliation. Linda sniffled and said, We're so proud of you, sweetheart. Jason smiled. Then he sat back down like he'd done something noble. My hands shook. Not from fear. From fury. I set my fork down carefully. Then I reached into my purse. The sound of the zipper was quiet, but it felt like thunder in my ears. Jason turned his head slightly. What are you doing? He whispered. I pulled the folder out slowly and placed it on the table. Linda blinked. What's that? Jason's face tightened. I saw the first crack of panic in his eyes. I opened the folder with deliberate calm. Since we're sharing, I said softly. I thought I'd share too. Linda's smile faltered. Emily, honey. I held up my hand. No. I've been quiet for a year. The room fell silent. Even the clinking of silverware stopped. I looked around the table. I made sure every single person was watching. Then I turned to Jason. Tell them, I said. Jason's eyes flashed. Emily, stop. Tell them the truth. I repeated louder. Linda's voice rose. Emily, this isn't appropriate. I laughed once, short and sharp. Not appropriate? You handed out prayer cards with my photo on them. Linda froze. Murmurs swept the table. Sophie's eyes widened. What? Someone whispered. My voice stayed steady, but my hands were trembling. My mother-in-law has been telling strangers at church that my womb is defective, I said. That I'm broken. That I'm depriving her son of fatherhood. Linda snapped. I was praying for you. You were humiliating me. I cut in. Jason reached for the folder. I slapped my palm down on it so hard the table shook. Jason flinched like he'd been slapped. Mark sat up straighter. Robert, Jason's father, stared at the folder with dark curiosity. Linda hissed. Emily, put that away. I leaned forward. No, I said, voice suddenly ice. Tonight, we stop pretending. Then I pulled out the first page. Jason's medical records. His name. His date of birth. His numbers. I held it up so everyone could see the header. Jason's face drained of color. Emily, he said, voice low and threatening, don't. I ignored him. I looked directly at Linda. You said my body was broken, I said. You told everyone I couldn't have children. Linda nodded stubbornly. Because that's what Jason told me. The room snapped toward Jason. Jason stiffened. I smiled faintly. Exactly. Then I began to read. Jason Carter. Semen analysis. Sperm concentration. I paused just long enough to let the suspense twist in the air. 5 million per milliliter. The room didn't react at first because they didn't understand. So I translated. Normal, I said, is 15 million or higher. A stunned silence. I continued, voice clear and steady. Motility. 20%. I glanced up. Normal is 40% or higher. Aunt Carol's mouth dropped open. Uncle Frank blinked like he couldn't compute what he was hearing. Sophie's eyes filled with tears instantly, like the truth hurt her. And Linda? Linda stared at the paper like it had transformed into a snake. Jason shot to his feet, chair flying backward. "That's fake," he snapped, lunging toward me. It happened so fast the room erupted. Gasps, shouting, plates rattling. Jason reached across the table, grabbing for the pages. But Mark stood up too. Mark's hand shot out, gripping Jason's arm like a steel clamp. "Jason," Mark barked. "Sit down." Jason jerked against him, like an animal. "Let go," he growled.
No.
Mark snapped. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Jason's face went red, then white, then red again. Panic fighting rage. Linda shrieked. "Emily made those up." I didn't even blink. I pulled out the second page. Doctor's notes. Messy handwriting. Clear conclusions. I read it slowly, savoring every word. "Male factor infertility is the primary concern," I said. "Immediate intervention recommended."
The room went dead.
Not even breathing sounded normal anymore. It was like the air itself had been sucked out. Then Robert, Jason's father, stood up without saying a word. He reached across the table. His hand was steady. His voice was not.
"Give me that," he said.
I handed him the pages. Robert adjusted his glasses and began reading. Line by line. Page by page. His face darkened as he read. His jaw clenched so tightly I thought it might crack. Jason stopped struggling, frozen in place like prey sensing a predator. Linda started babbling. "Robert, don't. He didn't mean it like that. Emily is violating privacy. This is illegal." Robert slammed the papers down so hard the glasses on the table rattled. "Enough," he said, voice low and deadly. Linda went silent immediately. Robert turned slowly toward Jason. His eyes weren't angry. They were worse. Disappointed. Like he was looking at a stranger wearing his son's face. "Jason," Robert said, each word heavy as stone. "Is this true?" Jason swallowed. His mouth opened, then closed. His throat bobbed. And for the first time in a year, I watched my husband run out of lies. For a moment after Robert asked the question, nobody moved. Not even Linda. Not even the cousins who loved drama. It was as if the entire dining room was waiting for Jason to do the one thing he'd never done in his life. Tell the truth. Jason's mouth opened again. His lips trembled slightly. Then, like a switch flipped, he laughed. It wasn't a real laugh. It was sharp. Defensive.
Desperate.
"Dad," he said, voice strained, "you can't seriously believe this." Robert didn't blink. "Answer the question." Linda sprang to life, like she'd been stabbed. "This is a setup," she cried, pointing at me. "She's trying to destroy my son. She probably forged these papers. People do that all the time." Aunt Carol gasped like Linda had said something brave. Jason seized on her words immediately. "Exactly," he snapped. "Emily's been unstable. With all the hormones and stress, she's not thinking clearly." My stomach twisted. There it was again. That same familiar weapon. She's sensitive. She's unstable. I inhaled slowly, forcing myself not to shake. I looked around the table. Some faces were horrified. Some looked confused. But one thing was different now. No one was looking at me with pity anymore. They were looking at Jason. Robert's voice dropped lower. "Jason." Jason's eyes darted to his father, then to Linda, then around the table like he was calculating where the escape routes were. "Fine," he said suddenly, throwing his hands up like a martyr.
"Fine.
Even if those numbers are mine, so what?" My heart clenched. I didn't expect that. Not that he'd admit it. Not that casually. Linda let out a strangled sound. "Jason." Jason cut her off. "Mom, stop." Her mouth fell open. She looked betrayed for half a second, like she couldn't believe her perfect son would shut her down in front of people. Jason turned back to the table. "Doctors exaggerate," he said, voice rising again, gaining confidence. "They throw scary words around. Severe, primary concern, it's all part of their strategy." Mark's eyebrows shot up. "Strategy?" Jason nodded aggressively.
"Yes. To sell treatments."
"To make money. You think they don't do that?" Robert's eyes narrowed. "So you're saying you lied?" Jason blinked. He realized too late what he'd stepped into. "I didn't lie," he said quickly. "I just simplified." I laughed. It came out bitter, exhausted, like something ripped from deep in my chest. "Simplified?" I repeated. Jason glared at me.
"Yes."
"Because my mother can't handle disappointment." Linda's face turned pale. The room collectively inhaled. Jason's voice got louder, the way it always did when he felt cornered. "You don't understand what it's like," he snapped at everyone. "You all expect me to be perfect. You all treat me like I have to be the strong one, the successful one." Robert slammed his palm on the table. "Do not blame us," he said. "You blamed your wife." Jason's face twisted. "I didn't blame her." Mark barked out a laugh. "You literally told everyone her body was broken." Jason whirled on him. Because it was easier. Linda suddenly started crying. Loud, dramatic sobs. I was just trying to help. I was praying. Sophie spoke up through tears, voice shaking. Mom, you were cruel. Linda snapped her head toward Sophie. Do not speak to me that way. Sophie flinched. I watched this family unravel in real time. And Jason still didn't look ashamed. He looked angry, like all of this was happening to him. His eyes locked onto mine. You did this, he hissed. I kept my voice calm.
No.
I ended what you started. Jason's chest rose sharply. He stepped closer to me, leaning over the table. You had no right, he said through clenched teeth. No right to humiliate me like this. I didn't move. I didn't blink. Humiliate you? I whispered. You let your mother turn me into a defective joke at church. Linda screeched. I didn't know. I turned my head toward her slowly. Oh, you didn't know? I said. Then why did you bring women to dinner? Why did you sit them next to my husband and talk about their good genes while I sat right there? Linda's crying faltered. Her face flushed red. She stammered. I was only trying to motivate. I snapped, voice finally cracking. You were trying to replace me. The room went silent again. Jason clenched his jaw so hard I could see it twitch. Then he leaned in and hissed. Stop being dramatic. That was it. That phrase. The one he'd used every time I cried. Every time I begged. Every time I needed him to be a husband instead of a coward. Something inside me exploded. I stood up so fast my chair scraped back, violently. Dramatic. I snapped. I took hormones that made me throw up at 2 a.m. while you hid your pills in your car. Gasps erupted. Linda's sobbing stopped completely. Mark's eyes widened. Even Aunt Carol looked stunned. I pulled out another paper. My test results, I said, voice shaking. Since Jason loves telling stories about my broken body, I slammed it down on the table. This says mild endometriosis, I said. Treatable. Manageable. I looked at Mark. Read it. Mark grabbed the paper, scanning it quickly. His face shifted from confusion to anger. This is normal, he muttered. This isn't even close to what Jason said. Jason lunged forward again. Give me that, he shouted, grabbing for the paper. Mark jerked back. Don't touch me, Mark warned. Robert stood up fully now, towering over the table. His voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Sit down, he commanded. Jason froze. Not because he respected his father. Because everyone was watching. Because the mask was slipping and he could feel it. He turned back to me, eyes burning. You ruined my life, he said, voice low. I stared at him. No, I said softly. You ruined mine. I grabbed the folder, sliding it back into my purse. My hands were shaking so hard the zipper fumbled. I didn't care. I pushed my chair back and stepped away from the table. Emily, Linda sobbed suddenly, reaching out. Please, this is family. I turned to her slowly. You made me feel like I wasn't family for a year, I said. Jason's chair scraped violently. He stood too fast, knocking it backward. Emily, don't you dare walk away from me, he snapped. I took another step. Jason came around the table fast, too fast. His hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. Hard. Pain shot up my arm. I gasped. His fingers dug in like claws. Stop, I said, voice shaking. Let go. Jason's grip tightened. You're going to sit down, he growled. We will talk privately. His face was red. Sweat glistened at his hairline. And suddenly the room wasn't a dinner anymore. It was danger. Mark moved first. Jason, he roared. He grabbed Jason's arm, yanking him backward. Jason jerked violently, still holding my wrist. I cried out, stumbling. Sophie screamed. Jason, stop. Robert's voice thundered. Let her go. Jason's eyes flicked to his father. For a split second his grip loosened, and Mark pried Jason's fingers off, one by one. I stumbled back, clutching my wrist. Red marks bloomed across my skin. The room stared. Not at me. At him. At the truth that couldn't be explained away anymore. Not stress. Not miscommunication. Not a misunderstanding. Jason had grabbed me in front of his entire family because he couldn't stand losing control. Linda collapsed into sobs again. Mark stood between Jason and me like a wall. Jason breathed hard, chest heaving, eyes wild. Robert stepped forward slowly, his face terrifyingly calm. Get out, he said to Jason. Jason blinked. What? Robert didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Get away from her, he repeated. Jason looked around like he expected someone to defend him. No one did. Linda's sobs softened into hiccups. Sophie stared at Jason like she'd never seen him before. Mark didn't move. Jason's throat bobbed. He took one shaky step back. And I realized something that made me feel both sick and free. This was the first time Jason had ever been truly exposed. I turned and walked toward the front door. My legs were trembling, but my spine felt straight for the first time in months. Behind me, Jason called my name. Hi, frantic. Emily, come back. We can fix this. I didn't answer. I didn't look back. The night air outside hit my face like water. Cold.
Clean. Real.
I made it halfway down the driveway before I heard footsteps behind me. I tensed, heart hammering, but it wasn't Jason. It was Robert. Emily, he called softly. I stopped. Robert approached carefully, hands in his pockets like he didn't want to scare me. When he got close, his face looked older than it had an hour ago. Not angry older. Ashamed older. He swallowed hard. I owe you an apology, he said. My throat tightened. Robert continued, voice rough. I should have asked you. I should have seen it. I let my son and my wife turn you into a scapegoat. I stared at the streetlights, blinking hard. He sighed. You deserved better, he said. From all of us. For a moment, all I could do was nod. My wrist throbbed. My chest felt too full. Robert stepped back slightly. If you need anything, he said quietly, call me. Not Linda. Not Jason. Then he looked down at my wrist. His jaw clenched again. And he whispered, like it hurt to admit. That was not a good man. I opened my car door with shaking hands, climbed in, and locked the doors immediately. As I pulled away, I saw Jason standing in the doorway of the house, frozen, pale, and furious. And for the first time, I didn't feel fear. I felt relief. Because now the lie was dead. And there was no bringing it back to life. The drive to Rachel's apartment was only 15 minutes, but it felt like I was crossing into a different life. My hands shook so badly on the steering wheel I had to pull over twice just to breathe. My wrist ached in sharp pulses where Jason's fingers had bruised me. Every time I looked down at the red marks, my stomach flipped, not because of the pain, but because of what they represented. Jason didn't just lie. He escalated. He grabbed me in front of his entire family because he couldn't stand losing the narrative. When I reached Rachel's building, I parked crooked, stumbled out of the car, and nearly dropped my purse. Rachel opened the door before I even knocked, like she'd been waiting behind it. Emily, she whispered, and the moment I saw her face, I broke. I didn't collapse dramatically.
I didn't sob loud.
I just cracked. Rachel pulled me into her arms and guided me inside like I was made of glass. Sit, she said firmly. I sat on her couch with my purse still clutched to my chest like a shield. My breathing was shallow, uneven. Rachel knelt in front of me and took my hands gently. Show me, she said. I hesitated for a split second. Then I lifted my sleeve. Rachel's eyes widened. Oh my God, she whispered. He did that. I nodded, throat tight. Rachel stood up, so fast her chair scraped the floor. I'm calling the police, she said. No, I said quickly.
Not yet.
Not tonight. Rachel turned to me, fury burning in her eyes. Emily, he assaulted you. The word landed heavier than I expected. Assaulted. I'd spent so long minimizing Jason's cruelty, turning it into stress, pressure, misunderstanding, that hearing the truth spoken out loud felt like swallowing ice water. Rachel sat beside me and wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. Tell me everything, she said softly.
So I did.
I told her about the clinic, about the sperm count and motility, about Jason's whisper in the parking lot. We say it's you. About Linda's prayer circle, the replacement girls at dinner, the texts, the pills hidden in the car, and finally the moment at the table when Jason reached for me like I was property. Rachel listened without interrupting, but by the end her hands were clenched into fists. You know what scares me? She said quietly. It's not just what he did. It's how comfortable he was doing it. I stared at the wall. Yeah, I whispered. That's what I can't stop thinking about. My phone buzzed, then buzzed again, then again. I didn't have to look to know who it was. Jason. Then another buzz, different number. Sophie. I hesitated, then opened it. Sophie. Emily, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Please tell me you're safe. Then Mark. Mark. I'm ashamed.
I'm furious.
If Jason comes near you again, call me. I mean it. My throat tightened. Because Jason's own siblings, people I had spent years trying to win over, were offering me more protection in one night than Jason had offered me in our entire marriage. Rachel glanced at my phone. Are you going back there? She asked. I didn't answer at first. Because until that moment, a piece of me still believed I might. That maybe Jason would finally realize what he'd done. That maybe shame would wake him up. Then my phone rang. Jason's name lit up the screen. Rachel reached for it like she wanted to throw it across the room, but I stopped her. I answered. Emily. Jason's voice poured through the speaker, shaky and urgent. Why are you doing this? Why are you trying to destroy me? I stared at my bruised wrist. Destroy you? I repeated softly. You humiliated me, he snapped. Then his voice dropped into that fake calm tone, the one he used when he wanted to sound reasonable. "We need to talk. You're spiraling." Spiraling. I let out a slow breath. "I'm not spiraling, Jason," I said. "I'm waking up." His silence was loud. Then he said quietly, "Come home." I almost laughed.
No, y whispered.
"Home isn't safe." His voice sharpened. "I didn't hurt you." I looked at Rachel, who was staring at me like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. I raised my voice slightly. "You grabbed me hard enough to bruise me," I said. "In front of your entire family." Jason huffed. "You were walking away." Like that justified it. Like I was his possession, and I had dared to escape. Rachel mouthed, "Hang up." But I needed to hear something. I needed proof that my instincts weren't lying. So I asked the question that mattered most. "Jason," I said quietly, "why did you lie?" He exhaled sharply, like I was exhausting him. "Because my mom would have blamed me," he said. "Because it would have ruined how they see me." I swallowed. "And ruining me was easier," I said. Jason didn't answer. That silence told me everything. I ended the call. My hands were shaking again, but not from adrenaline. From clarity. Rachel touched my shoulder gently. "What now?" I stared down at the folder in my purse, the one that started this fire. "I need more," I said. Rachel blinked. "More?" I nodded. "Evidence," I whispered. "If he's capable of that kind of lie, there's more. There has to be." The next morning, I drove back to my house while Jason was at work. Rachel insisted on coming with me. "You're not going alone," she said firmly, and for once I didn't argue. Not because I was weak, but because I was finally learning what safety looked like. We entered quietly. The house looked normal.
Clean. Calm.
Like nothing had happened. But I felt it instantly, the contamination. Rachel stayed by the door while I went upstairs to pack. I opened the closet on Jason's side and grabbed a suitcase. That's when I saw the stack of papers tucked behind his dress shirts.
Neat.
Organized. Deliberate. I pulled them out. Adoption requirements. Surrogacy cost breakdowns. Egg donor options. My stomach turned. Then I saw the handwriting in the margins. Jason's handwriting. "Emily's eggs probably won't work. Need donor." I froze. I flipped another page. "Tell agency about Emily's condition." Circled. 3 times. My throat tightened so hard I could barely swallow. I wasn't just a scapegoat at family dinner. I was a project. A problem he had been planning around, strategizing, documenting, engineering, like I wasn't a person at all. I stumbled downstairs holding the papers like they were radioactive. Rachel took one look at my face and stood up. "What?" she asked. I handed her the stack. Rachel read the notes. Her expression darkened into something almost dangerous. "Oh my God," she whispered. He was building a case. I sank onto the bottom stair. I felt cold all over. Not because I was surprised, but because it confirmed what my heart had been screaming for months. Jason didn't lie once. He didn't panic. He didn't make a mistake. He chose this story. He chose it again and again and again. And he was still choosing it. Because even after the dinner, even after he bruised my wrist, even after the truth exploded, he was still calling it my condition. My problem. My broken body. I stared at the papers until my vision blurred. Then I whispered the words that felt like stepping off a cliff. "I can't stay married to this." Rachel sat beside me.
"You don't have to," she said.
And for the first time in years, I believed someone when they said that. I didn't go back to that house as Jason's wife. Not after the bruises. Not after the folder. Not after the handwriting in the margins that proved he'd been planning a future built on my humiliation. That night I stayed at Rachel's again. I barely slept. Every time I drifted off, I'd jolt awake hearing Jason's voice in my head like a haunting. "You're sensitive. You're overreacting. You're the main problem." By morning, I realized something terrifying. Jason hadn't just lied to his family. He had lied to me about who he was. And the man I thought I married? He never existed. Rachel made coffee and set a mug in front of me. "What do you want to do?" she asked quietly. I stared into the dark liquid like it might contain an answer. Then I said it. "I'm leaving." Rachel didn't flinch. She didn't ask, "Are you sure?" She didn't tell me to calm down. She just nodded like she'd been waiting for me to finally choose myself. "Okay," she said. "We'll do it safely." Jason called 11 times that day. I watched the screen light up again and again. When I finally answered, his voice was already heated. "Where are you?" he demanded. "Why are you ignoring me?" I felt nothing. Not rage. Not fear. Just emptiness. "I'm not coming home," I said. Jason scoffed. "You're still doing this? Emily, you made a scene. People are upset. We can fix it. We can fix it." Like it was a broken lamp. Like it wasn't a year of humiliation and cruelty. "Fix what?" I asked. Your lies? Your mother's abuse? The bruises on my wrist? Jason inhaled sharply, then switched strategies, like I'd flipped to the next page of a script he knew by heart. Don't twist this, he said, voice suddenly softer. I love you. I just made a mistake. I swallowed hard. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, I said. You built an entire story where I was defective so you could stay perfect. His voice sharpened again. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The pressure? I echoed. I was injecting hormones into my body while you hid your medication, like a coward. Jason's silence lasted too long. Then he muttered, I'll call Mom. I froze. What? I'll tell her, he said, like he deserved credit already. If that's what you want, I'll fix it. My chest tightened, because a piece of me still wanted to believe it. Still wanted to believe he could become the man he pretended to be. So I said the words that would decide everything. Call her right now, I said. Put it on speaker. Jason hesitated. I could hear him breathing through the phone. I can't right now, he said finally. She's probably busy. I let out a slow laugh that wasn't funny at all. There it was. The hesitation. The truth. He would rather lose me than lose his mother's image of him. And in that moment, something in me clicked so cleanly, it felt like a door locking shut. Don't bother, I said quietly. What? He snapped. Don't bother pretending you're going to change, I said. Because even now you're still protecting yourself. Jason's voice turned cold. So you're really going to throw away our marriage? He hissed. Over one dinner? I shut my eyes briefly. One dinner. Like I hadn't been dying in silence for a year. I'm not throwing it away, I said. You already did. I hung up. That afternoon, I made my first appointment with a counselor. I went alone because I knew if Jason was there, he'd charm the room, twist the story, make me look unstable. The counselor's office smelled like lavender and paper. She was kind, calm, sharp-eyed. After I told her everything, every lie, every manipulation, every moment I doubted my own reality, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said the sentence that changed my life. Couples therapy is not recommended when there's been systematic deception and emotional abuse. The words hit my chest like a weight and a release at the same time. Because it wasn't me. I wasn't too sensitive. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't crazy. I was being abused. The counselor gave me referrals for individual therapy and told me to focus on safety and boundaries first. When I left the building, the air outside felt different. Cleaner. Like I could breathe. 2 days later, I rented a tiny one-bedroom apartment across town. It wasn't glamorous. The floors creaked. The kitchen was small. But the windows were wide, and the sunlight poured in like freedom. Signing that lease made my hands shake. Not from fear. From the terrifying realization that I was choosing myself for the first time in years. Jason didn't take it well. When he found out, he exploded. You can't just leave, he shouted on the phone. You can't just make decisions without me. I laughed. That's funny, I said. Because you made decisions without me every time you lied about my body. He went quiet, then hissed. You're punishing me. No, I said softly. I'm protecting myself. The next week, Rachel and I went back to the house while Jason was at work. I didn't take everything. I took what was mine. My laptop. My clothes. My grandmother's necklace. My journals. My books. The things that felt like my identity. Everything else could rot in the fake life Jason built. When I left, I slid my key into an envelope on the kitchen counter with a note. I'll contact you through a lawyer. That sentence didn't feel real until I said it out loud. A lawyer. Divorce. Words I never thought I'd speak. But then the proof in Jason's handwriting flashed in my mind again. Emily's eggs probably won't work. I felt a surge of disgust. I didn't owe him softness. I owed myself survival. I met with an attorney the following Tuesday. His name was Daniel Brooks, mid-40s, professional, calm in the way you want someone calm when your life is on fire. I brought everything. The medical records. The texts. The photos of Jason's unopened medication boxes. Screenshots of Linda's church prayer posts. Yes, she'd posted them. Even photos of my bruised wrist. Daniel didn't flinch. He read. He nodded. He took notes. Then he looked up and said, Emily, you have strong grounds. My throat tightened. Grounds? I whispered. Emotional abuse, he said plainly. Fraud. Manipulation. And documentation that's frankly overwhelming. Hearing it framed that way felt like stepping out of a fog. Jason had been trying to make me feel like I was overreacting. But a professional looked at the evidence and saw it immediately. Daniel warned me Jason might drag things out. He'll try to control the narrative, he said. Men like this don't handle consequences well. Men like this. Even that phrasing felt validating. Jason did contest it. Of course he did. He claimed I was abandoning him. He said I'd ruined his reputation. He even tried to tell relatives I left because I didn't want kids. A whole new lie. A whole new story where he could stay the victim. But this time I wasn't alone. Mark texted me. He's lying. We know. Sophie cried on the phone and said, I'm sorry I believed him. Robert called and said, voice rough with shame, if anyone asks, I'll tell them the truth. Jason's family didn't split the way Linda wanted. They didn't turn against me. They turned against the lie. Against the person Jason truly was. 3 months later, after enough back and forth to make me feel like my soul was being audited, Jason agreed to sign. Not because he suddenly grew a conscience, but because his lawyer warned him what would happen in court. Because all his secrets would become public record. And Jason didn't fear hurting me. He feared being seen. The divorce became final 30 days after mediation. Daniel called me. It's done, he said. You're free. I hung up and sat in my apartment in complete silence.
No fireworks.
No dramatic music. Just relief, so deep it felt like I could finally unclench my body after years. Rachel came over that night with cheap champagne and takeout. She raised her glass. To Emily she said, the woman who stopped letting people rewrite her story. I laughed, and this time it didn't hurt. Because the truth was, I didn't lose a husband. I lost a performance. I lost a mask. And I found myself again beneath it. Now my life is quieter. No church prayer circles. No family dinners that feel like trials. No husband who needs me broken to feel whole. I still go to therapy. I still have days where I mourn the marriage I thought I had. But the difference is, I don't mourn him anymore. I mourn the illusion. And I'm letting it go. One honest breath at a time.